Welcome in YouTube, Global Hoops official. Gil McGregor here with Kyle Irving. Kyle is NBA.com's draft expert. He's got plenty of draft content over on NBA.com in preparation for the draft, which is on Thursday, July 29th. We know who number one is going to be. We've talked about that. And we also know who the top four is going to be. We don't know where they're going to go, but we know where they're going to be. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of talent in this draft class. And I'll ask you what people usually don't ask, but who's number five? Like, what are the names that we can think about in this draft that could go fifth to the Orlando Magic, who will be on the clock at fifth in this draft?
I think what's interesting about this draft class in particular is that it seemed like it started out as a consensus top five with Jonathan Kamenga from the G League Ignite being that fifth prospect. But it seems like as the draft process, pre-draft process, I should say, has gone on, there's other names that have entered that conversation. And while I'm still personally extremely high on Jonathan Kamenga as a rangy 6'8" forward with a 7-foot wingspan and a body ready for the NBA, I do understand why there's other names leaking into the conversation because of Kamenga's struggles as a shooter, iffy shot selection at times. He's not always locked in on the defensive end of the floor. And even though I think personally that's something that he could work around once he gets to that next level and really fits into what his role in the NBA is going to be versus what it was with the G League Ignite, I can also understand why names like Scottie Barnes is one of the first ones that you will see popping up on mock drafts going in at number 5 to the Orlando Magic. And it's more than just the idea that the Magic love selecting players like Scottie Barnes, who he measured with one of the longest wingspans of the NBA Combine at 7 foot 2 inches, 7 foot and 2 3/4 inches. I'm going to round up to 7'3" there just because that's less of a mouthful. And this is a player who essentially played point guard, even though he has the body of a power forward during his one season at Florida State. He reminds me a lot of Draymond Green. He has a lot of that in his game as a versatile defender, a passer, and just someone who he has instincts of being able to get everybody on the offensive end involved. Another player that comes to mind is Keon Johnson, who you may have heard his name pop up around the NBA Combine, where he set the Combine record for all-time highest vertical leap at 48 inches. That is ridiculous athleticism. He is extremely explosive. His first step matches what you would think someone with a 48-inch vertical would have for that elite quickness in first step of agility. And even though, he didn't really have to flash that jump shot that he had at Tennessee because he was so fast, so explosive, and he could get to the rim with ease, it's not like he has a hitch in his jump shot. It's something that he can work around. It's something that I think NBA teams will be able to bring out the best out of him. And just someone that has that type of versatility, that type of explosiveness, I could see why someone would maybe roll the dice and take him at number 5. And a player comparison for him, to me personally, is someone like Victor Oladipo, who we saw get selected in the top 5 by the Orlando Magic, actually, in his own respective draft. So I think those are another 2 names that could enter the conversation with Jonathan Kamenga for that number 5 pick.
I mean, history does repeat itself. I like how you mentioned the Victor Oladipo thing. And something interesting about those 3 guys, Jonathan Kamenga literally could have been a high school senior last year. He's not even 19 yet. These other guys were freshmen. You talk about their measurables and their physical attributes. These guys are still growing too. So you don't be surprised when, Scottie Barnes grows even more into his arms or something like that when he's a few years in the league. And that's why these young guys oftentimes go in the top 5. That being said, do you think there is anybody overlooked? I'm setting you up for something too, because I know who one person you're going to say, because he's not as young as the other guys. And him and other guys, are there people that are overlooked in the lottery range? And why do you think that's the case?
I think another player that's being overlooked, and I'm not saying he's a top 5 prospect, and I'm not even gonna, flirt with the idea of him being a top 5 prospect, but like you alluded to, Corey Kisford out of Gonzaga. He's someone who's a little bit older than you're used to seeing in this day and age, being targeted in the lottery as a 22-year-old senior coming out of Gonzaga. But this is a guy who, he's the best shooter in this draft class, hands down. Shot 44% from 3 his senior season. He was the West Coast Conference Player of the Year, not his teammate Jalen Suggs, who's being projected to go in the top 5. No, it was Corey Kispert that was the West Coast Conference Player of the Year this year. And for a player where shooting is at a premium in the NBA, every team could use a player that can shoot the ball like Corey Kispert. It surprises me a little bit more that he's not getting more top 10 consideration. I think another player that comes to mind is Mo Wagner's brother, Franz Wagner, coming out of Michigan, who, even though he's a sophomore, he's still only 19 years old. And this is a kid who averaged 13 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, and a steal while shooting 34% from 3. So when you take into the fact that he can do all those little things, he's, wiry and he's in your face on the defensive end. He can guard multiple positions. He's someone that can bring the ball up the floor and initiate offense, but he can also create his own shot. He has good athleticism and he shoots the ball cleanly from long range. He reminds me a little bit of Gordon Hayward. So for a player like that, who seems like a lot of his skill sets are intact and there's not a lot of developing that has to go on there, he's somebody that I think is a little bit more of a safe pick in the lottery compared to some of the other prospects around him.
So those guys you think are being a little overlooked. Is there any other names, or are there any other names that you feel like fans should be aware of when we're thinking about, I guess maybe that 6 through 14 range? You talked about Kisford, you talked about Wagner. Who else should be on our radar as we prepare for the draft?
I think Jalen Johnson out of Duke is a player who might be getting overlooked a little bit, because I don't want to call it character issues, because you never really know what's really going on with somebody personally, but this is a player who left IMG Academy, a prestigious prep school, before he went to Duke to get prepared to that next level. And then when he was at Duke, he left Duke a little bit early to get prepared for the NBA draft. So, you can't really blame somebody for looking out for themselves, but I think that that's a reason why he's being overlooked a little bit. And this is a guy who, again, to use the word versatility, and that's the key word when you're looking in the draft in this day and age in the NBA with how much everybody's switching. Jalen Johnson, someone that's extremely versatile. He's 6'9". He can guard out on the perimeter. He likes to bring the ball up the floor off of defensive rebounds. He can create for himself. He's someone that when he has his back to the basket in the post, he can pass the ball around a little bit. I think that he's somebody that you have to keep your eye on as a potential top 10 pick in this year's draft class. Another player that you're going to start seeing shooting up draft boards, and give me a moment here with the pronunciation, Alperin out of Turkey. He was the Turkish League MVP at 18 years old. He averaged 19 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, a block and a steal, almost 2 blocks per game. And that's in a professional league. And I mean, remember what happened last time we talked about a player overseas that won MVP and then had some questions going into the draft, and Luka Doncic. Now we're seeing the same thing with Şengün. He just had a great outing at the FIBA qualifying tournament in Victoria, even though Turkey came up short of their goal. And I think that he's somebody you're going to start seeing rise up draft boards just off the idea of he's already proved that he can do this type of stuff against grown men. And then other than that, I think there's 2 premier scorers in this year's draft class that you need to keep an eye on. One being James Bouknight out of UConn, another being Moses Moody out of Arkansas. They're both wings. Bouknight is a little bit more athletic. He relies on that athleticism, but he can jump out of the gym. He's extremely shifty, a great step back jump shot. He already has a lot of moves in his arsenal that you see from NBA players today. He reminds me a little bit of 6th Man of the Year Jordan Clarkson. And then Moses Moody kind of reminds me a little bit of a guy who's helping carry his team to the NBA Finals right now, and Chris Middleton, who he has a 7-foot wingspan at on the wing as a guard who's going to be defending on the perimeter. That's pretty enticing. And when you can shoot the ball the way that Moody can, it kind of brings that game all the way together. Like a Chris Middleton, he also kind of has a little bit of Andrew Wiggins in his game as well as an intense defender on that side of the ball. So when you're looking at names of players that could potentially crack that top 10, but if they fall to your team in that 10 to 14 range, just inside the lottery, or maybe even a little bit outside the lottery, you should be pretty satisfied with the player that your favorite team got.
I think I'm hearing it's really a common thread with all these guys is they have skill sets or attributes that will immediately translate to the next level. And I think, as talented as the top 4 or top 5 is, depending on how you shake it, these lottery teams, specifically the ones that pick more than once in the lottery, are in for a treat, and they will get a impactful player right away in the NBA draft, which again, Thursday, July 29th, 2021, the NBA draft is coming very soon, and we've got you covered here on Global Hoops Official as well as NBA.com. And check us out on the Raptors Pod Table podcast. We've got some draft editions coming for you there as well. Thanks again for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to us and get these right into your feed every time we have a new video. For Kyle Irving, I'm Gil McGregor. We'll catch you next time.